And we're live everywhere. Wow. Everywhere.
Fun.
So it's another episode of, I don't know, aligning teams. I don't even know what to call these episodes. Where we're going to talk about many different topics over the course of the period of time. And we will let the conversation flow wherever it goes. And Becca, in her infinite wisdom, said that we are going to talk about connecting dots. So that's what we're going to go with. So we'll let Becca start.
Great, thanks. So I think before we connect dots, we have to gather dots. And I don't think we actually have to gather dots. I think dots are there all along our path. And it's just when we take a moment and kind of look around and realize that those dots have all been placed there for a reason. And then we start to connect them and it's like, holy shit.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you don't even know what the dots are, right? You don't even know what you need until it falls in front of you. And one of the things I do like to do is connect dots, right? And
you're very good at it.
Thank you. And bring pieces of puzzles together and identifying the pieces that are needed over the course of the longevity of whatever it is, right? Projects, companies, anything, strategy. So I'm really big on, the long-term projections of dots needed and where those pieces come into play and how to integrate them into the bigger picture. But I also think a lot of it has to do with flow, right? And just being in flow and allowing things to present themselves to you.
So I find speaking in a different language, like trying to bring it to a different place. I remember at one point I was coaching with Dave Gorham, who was one of the speakers for its time. And I talked about, I hear about this thing about leaning in, just lean in. I'm like, what the hell's lean in though? Like, how do you lean in? And I used to feel a similar thing when we would talk about flow. And okay, great, get in the flow, but what does that mean? Like, how do you get in the flow? And my answer, which I'm sure we all have different answers of kind of tangible ways to do that, is it's really a matter of understanding where you're resisting. So it's not a matter of getting in the flow. It's a matter of stop resisting, surrender, call it what you want. But I think that's the perspective that helped me understand what get in the flow meant. Great, sounds wonderful. I want to be there. How do I do it?
So for me last year, that was letting go, right? It's everybody says, just let it go. Just let it go. Well, what does that mean? Let it go.
I was just going to say, but what does that mean?
It's one of those things that you don't understand until you do it. And it's literally releasing control or the control that it has over you, whatever it is, right? Because in a human world, in physical plane, and everything that we live in daily, we want to either control outcomes, control pain points, control our path, control where we're going.
Orchestrate. Sometimes it's orchestrating too, right? I feel like controlling makes it sound like we're doing something not as positive intent, but sometimes we were trying to orchestrate, right? We want it to happen and we think we know best.
That's control.
Positive spins on things.
Yes. It's a positive reframe. Hey, Alexandra. But at the same time, what I've learned is getting in flow is letting go of orchestrating also. Yeah. And again, this isn't something that I have a ton of experience with. It's something that has just started happening around me and allowing things to just fall in place as they are and having the utmost amount of faith that everything is going to fall in place. Again, not my strong point, right? Because my whole life is I want to control my pain points. I want to control how much pain I can go through. What I've realized is through my faith, trust in the universe, trust in myself today, is no matter what comes my way, I will go through it. And I will get through it. So,
but we resist things worried that we can't, or that we won't, or that we don't know how, or that we can't handle it, or that...
Yes. Or that we just don't want
the right thing, whatever the hell the right thing is.
Or we just don't want to, right? We don't want to sit in pain.
Right.
But also that's where the deepest growth comes from, right? It sucks.
I was going to say, I keep hearing that, but not a fan yet.
It's not fun, but there is a tremendous amount of knowledge and wisdom that comes through it by sitting in it and understanding the deepest parts of ourselves and why we continue to either live in patterns and behaviors or choose not to. Right? So, Michael, I've never heard.
You've been quiet.
Never heard you this quiet, Michael.
You guys are going at it, and I've got all kinds of things I was going to say, but I'm waiting. Respectfully.
Well, it's time for the experienced wisdom.
It's time, Michael. It's time.
It's time.
So part.
You'll learn to hate that, but it'll.
So
stick.
Part of what I wrote down was letting go, being present, is really a challenge for a lot of people to just be in that moment. And it's about listening, feeling, being aware, sensing. It's about connecting to your intuition or our intuition. And it's also about non-attachment, about having faith, trust in the process, and taking responsibility for ourselves, but at the same time, allowing the energy to take us where it wants to and needs to take us. So that's part of what I've been playing with, and as I've been listening. And I had a discussion with someone else today about the power of not knowing and openness, curiosity, possibilities. But a lot of us were so tied to our left brain thinking or what it should look like or what we've been programmed to what it should look like or what we want it to look like that we don't allow what is to show up. And that for me, I'm doing my best just to be in that space of not knowing, not controlling, allowing, and just seeing what shows up.
So I have a friend that says, and pick your higher power, but he says, I'm in the flow of I don't know, but God does.
Well, and we're God. So, if we keep on telling, okay, they know, well, okay, who is they? And for me, I do believe in a higher power, but I also believe that a higher power keeps on saying, Michael, what do you want? Michael, you're in charge. Stop giving me the responsibility. You take responsibility for your own life. And as you move forward, the universe, will support you, providing it's for your highest good. However, they also allow us to choose other things. So we have the opportunity of creation and the responsibility of creation.
But then that would make us, then we'd have to be accountable.
Accountable.
That's like a bad word, isn't it? Like, who wants to be accountable? And who wants to be responsible for what happens in their life, right? It's easier to point blame and, always point fingers and say it's somebody else. And, the whole allowing thing and allowing things to fall in place just reminds me of a conversation I had recently about how I have this list of what I'm looking for in certain ways. And I guess that's kind of the opposite of allowing things to just fall in place in ways and allowing things to just be whatever they are. Right. And again, I think part of it is a defense mechanism. Part of it is I want to protect my pain and I want to control what I allow into my life. Again, it goes back to control. Right. And I guess at some point I'm going to have to evolve through that because I'm not going to go around it and understand that, there's millions of possibilities. There's millions of opportunities. There's plenty of situations and circumstances. But if we don't allow for them to exist, then we're already shutting ourselves down to what could present ourselves and connect dots, right? Back to connecting dots. So how do we... So this is a question for you, Michael, right? And Becca, you would probably have insight into this as well. But how do we? I'm going with age and experience. How do we?
Let's not get personal here.
I'll take it because I think I'm on the good end of that stick.
You're the young one, Becca. Go on.
how do we lose the future expectations?
Okay.
How do we lose the future, even goals in a way, right? They
I
create
think
these.
wrong question.
Wrong question? So what's the right question?
I don't think you need to lose them. Right? I mean, you have to have something. If you're a ship with no lighthouse, like where the hell are you going to go? You're going to float around. But I think it's super important that we pay attention to what we're focused on. So I think you need to have some sort of direction, goal, idea, whatever, some creativity that's flying around in there. But then you need to release attachment to the outcome. Like, I want to feel a certain way, but it doesn't have to be because XYZ comes into my life and behaves ABC. Like, I just want to experience this, but it doesn't have to be the way I prescribe it. Like, when you go back to your list, I don't think there's anything wrong with the list, because I think, as Kim Addis talks about over and over and over, what you focus on grows. And we've heard it said a million different ways, right? But it's true. What you focus on grows. And as humans, something will fill our brain. We can try to be empty brained. It doesn't work. There's always something spinning in there. And so paying attention to what you're focusing on is super important. And so if you create a list, you can create the list of what you would like, because then you are going to help attract that into your sphere. But you can't be attached to it. It has to be that way.
So
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's very, very good, and I totally agree with you. And I find it interesting. Law of attraction, write up your list, be very clear, visualize what you want, all the little details. That's one way of doing it. And another way of doing it is surrendering to your higher self, or the greater good, however you want to call it, or universal consciousness, and saying, bring me what is in my highest and best interest, and trusting the universe. I one time made up a list of pages of what I wanted in a relationship, and this woman showed up, and there was only one thing on that list that she wasn't, and I didn't put it down. And it was like, oh, that's interesting, because she was gay, and it was like, oh.
Minor detail.
and so I spent all this time making this detailed list. She was everything, and we knew each other from lots of lifetimes and everything else, except she said, Michael, I'm into women this lifetime. And I went, oh, okay, I support you. So what's interesting is all of these laws and perceptions have a caveat. And looking at that caveat, or the weak link, or the disclaimer, whatever it may be, is interesting to do. And the more positive, the more we are, the more work we do on ourselves, the more clearing out, we naturally go to a higher frequency and vibration, which allows us to attract our greater good rather than sabotaging ourselves or undermining ourselves.
That sounds.
So I think, like I said, we're not going to be empty brained. So you just took what I was saying, like, rather than focusing on the crap list, you focus on the positive list of what you want, and you just took that to another level. So you're still filling your brain, but you're expanding it even greater than the details. And I think that's a hard place for everybody to get to. Like, if you haven't even gotten to the idea of focusing on what you think you want versus what you don't want, I think it's hard to go to the next step. But if you can get to the next step, I think that's even more powerful.
So what would happen if we, like in attracting the perfect partner, we were in a loving space to ourselves, an honorable, respectful place, and all of a sudden people resonated with that frequency and responded to that frequency and vibration, as opposed to us doing anything?
It sounds.
It'd be a good plan.
It sounds like it's a lot of work and a lot less work, and also a lot less of control. And then I would have to really trust self, higher self, myself, and the universe to bring in and connect dots for me without me having to put forth the effort.
Is it hard to trust your higher self though, or is it just hard to trust that your higher self is going to be driving the car?
I think in the past, because of my lack of trusting self at all, that's where the question stems from. The doubt of higher self, because I always got in the way and self-sabotaged and did tons of fun things, because apparently on my list in the past I left out sanity. So, but I obviously was also coming from a broken place, right? So I was also attracting whatever it was at that frequency. And I can't deny that either. So as I've shifted and things have shifted, things are attracting at a much different level and a different pace. Do I allow them to? That's debatable. Some days, depends on the day. But it's a lot of this has to do, I think, with the core foundation of trust. Trusting of self, trusting of higher self, trusting that the universe has our best interest, trusting the fact that we are what we believe we are, right? Like, we believe in ourselves to the utmost level that we can possibly be, right? And when I sit there in meditation every morning for that 45 minutes to an hour and a half, whatever it is each day, which obviously now depends if the heater's working inside, how long I want to sit outside. But when I really look at it, it comes down to, I work so hard. I don't want to say I work so hard, but I've put a lot of time and effort into creating these routines, rituals for myself to get myself to that higher self every morning and be in this grounded, centered place. And I feel like there's days that I self-sabotage even that, right? Because then I allow my mind to get involved and start bringing it back down a little bit, moving into fear, moving into insecurities, moving into abandonment
It's
issues.
all fear.
Right.
It's really all fear.
It's all
like
fear.
An insecurity is simply a fear.
Right. But I think that it comes down to trust, and it comes down to self-trust. And you can't trust anyone else until you trust yourself. Like,
That's the exact conversation that Sparkle and I just had. Like, literally the exact conversation we just had.
Everything in this world happens by accident, so you should definitely keep that in mind consistently.
Going back to the dots.
Yes. Sparkle is a large dot, more like a human light bulb.
Bright, shining dot.
Yes. Sparkle is amazing. I haven't introduced Michael to Sparkle yet.
Definitely need to have a conversation with her.
Yes.
But I think so. That brings me to, unless Michael, you have something before I go taking other Michael.
Oh, no.
Michael B.
What I've been working on myself now all my life, and we're only as strong as our weakest link. And I am, working on ourselves is a never-ending process. And even, we get to the point where we're going to transcend or leave the earth plane. However, the journey continues, and it continues till the end of time. The embracing our wounded parts, loving our wounded parts, calling them back to us, dusting them off, polishing them, forgiving them.
How do you find those parts?
Well, you just watch what shows up in your life and watch our actions and reactions, watch our triggers, watch my triggers, okay? And just notice, what I notice is, okay, there's times I'm relaxed, there's times my shoulders get tense, there's times I feel good, there's times that I'm nurturing and supporting myself and others. But we can't give to anyone else what we don't have inside. We may see part of the challenge, especially with us healers, or I'll talk for myself. A lot of us got into healing because we wanted to control and fix our environment so that we were safe as a child. And so we try to learn how to change out there. And then we get older and we're still trying to change or control out there. When we fix it inside, when we make those adjustments, we become quieter, we feel safer in any environment. And I've learned, let me back up, be even more personal. In the past, it was too painful for me to listen to other people's stories. And only recently have I been able to sit down and listen to other people's stories, because I've done more work on myself and my pain, so that when I'm listening to other people's pain, it's not triggering me. So whenever we want to change something external, in my opinion, the first place to look is not external, but looking at myself, going, okay, where does that exist within me? Part of the story of Ho'oponopono was, not, I'm sorry, please forgive me. That's like one grain of sand in the Sahara Desert. The person who originated was able to see energy, see entities, see dimensional doorways, and look at what was all the underlying stuff. What were the entities, the energies, the thought patterns, and all that was going on. And one of the people said, rather than changing the outside world, and excuse my finger for pointing, is go inside ourselves, clear that within us, and our whole external world will start changing. So what I've been focusing on is saying, whenever I'm talking to anyone that's hurting or going through anything, is disengage, go inside myself, look at where that's going on within me, do some more healing and clearing there, and maybe crying, and watching what's happening with the other person and how they're shifting. I'm holding the energy, I'm holding sacred space. I hope that makes some sense. Go on.
Go ahead, Michael.
So, look, I mean, let's break it down simply. We're all mirrors, right? So we're only going to reflect what we're able to heal in ourselves. So it makes perfect sense that the world is going to come from our perception based on where we're at with our own healing journey, right? Truth of the matter is, if you want to get into frequencies and vibrations and where people are at, and look at Dr. David Hawking's, levels of consciousness. And, 2 years ago, even though I was awake, I was in a very miserable state, right? Miserable. I would have met somebody that, let's say, was living in unconditional love, right in that 500 to 600 range of vibration frequency. And I would have known that they were up there, but I wouldn't have been able to see it through my own perception, because my own perception was just, miffed, and it was cloudy, and it was very chaos driven, right? So we're only going to see things from our own perspective. The other side of that is when we start moving up on that scale, as we do the work on ourselves, and we get to that 500, 600, 700 range, which is possible, depending on the work that we do on ourselves and how deep we're willing to go. When we see others, we see it from a little bit more of an objective place. But I also have noticed that I see a lot of it with potential too, right? Because I'm looking from a different place now, right? So I'm living into looking at potential. And we're specifically talking about others. And, like Michael was saying, when I open these safe spaces and I sit down and I speak to people and I share my vulnerability with them and share my stories and my perception with them, is to create that truly safe space for open flowing conversations to happen, no matter where they go, right? It's never, I've learned not to have an objective with where a conversation goes anymore. You never know who's getting ran over in the grocery store with a cart. You never know what's going to interfere. So you kind of just sit back and you start opening this space so that it comes from a place of unconditionalness, right? And not judgment free and trusting.
Not attached to the outcome.
Yeah. I mean, and it's funny because in so many aspects of my life, I'm not attached to outcomes anymore. But then I still find that there's a few that I'm really stuck on outcome. And I'm working through it.
Sounds like you're human, Michael.
I don't want to be.
Well, come
But
on.
you are.
This is a fun ride.
It has its moments.
Good.
But it's like, it's an interesting journey though, right? Like, this is a lifelong journey. You know, we're covering, I really would like to do a show where we cover somebody from each decade of their life, like even a 5-year-old, right? Like, and have everybody talk from their perspective of a journey. Because we're all on this same path. We're all going through the same things, just at different levels. And if we didn't do the healing when we were younger, let's say under 10, then when you're in your 40s, if you didn't do the healing, you're having the same issues, just much more magnified and grandiose. And if you don't do it in your 40s, then your 50s. If you don't do it in your 50s, then your 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, you know, now we could go to 110s, right? Like, you know, we can Zoom somebody in from wherever around the world. But it's like, it's all the same journey. It's all the same. It's the same experiential journey, the same steps for healing, but a lot of people don't know how or don't feel comfortable going into that healing space until they are. I have no idea where I just went with all this, but
And if they don't do it this lifetime, they get a chance to do it next lifetime.
do-overs.
Because the journey continues.
I am living proof of that statement.
I resemble that remark.
Yes, yes. Ground us, Becca. Ground us.
Come back. No. No, I think I'm going to go somewhere else, actually. And I don't know. You guys can pull it together in a moment, but I feel like I come from a very different place, which I hope that a lot of people can understand, like that they resonate with it as well. You know, there are plenty of people out there that have not had the best experience growing up, that had really rough experiences, that it's easy as an outsider to hear the story and look at it and say, I understand that you would have wounds to heal. Like, holy shit, like no person should ever experience some of those things, nor experience them as a child, nor experience all of them in a short period of time. Like, that's just not fair. And no wonder you have wounds to heal. I came from a loving family, 2 parents, still live together. No major issues. Like, yes, mom gets on dad's nerves, dad gets on mom's nerves, but like no major issues. Literally 1 divorce in my entire like extended family. And it was like this amicable, like little whatever. I grew up with all of my cousins and aunts and uncles and grandparents and great grandparents around. I have 2 sisters. There's no family feuding. There's no abuse. There's no alcoholism. There's no, you know, massive skeletons in the closet.
Are you saying you're bored?
Maybe sometimes unrelatable, but no, I'm not bored. Don't bring it on. I don't need any of that, right? But clearly, I'm in my 40s and some things are showing up. So I go back to my question of how do we see our wounds? How do we understand what our wounds are to heal them? Because I always imagined wounds came from abuse and from neglect and from shame and from this and from that. And, you know, I'm sure there were bits and pieces here and there in my world, but I would not say that that was the majority of my experience.
Becca,
or am I blocking it out? Sorry, Mom and Dad.
So I have a question for you, Becca. How many lifetimes have you lived?
Before I met Michael, I was very comfortable with 1.
So
and I'm still kind of hanging out in that 1, so I'm not really much further along than that.
Uh-huh. And when we get a chance to look back over the many hundreds, thousands of lifetimes we've had, both on this planet and on other planets, we get a chance to see residues that we carry. In fact, I was working with one healer psychic, and I was quite blown away because she took me back when England was still attached to Europe.
You guys are killing me, but go ahead.
No, we would never do that.
You are 2 of the same human beings. And just like, I think I'm experiencing right now what you just talked about maybe doing. I'm getting two different bits of your lives, like both of them physically here in front of me. But go ahead, keep talking.
And Becca, what's interesting is what is more painful, a feather or a lightning bolt? And it depends on the person who is having that experience. And sometimes the experience we have is not ours. We could absorb it from our parents. It could be cellular memory. It could be going back historically. It could be from the land. Go on, Michael.
So now that we've taken this conversation to a different level, where Becca can no longer ground us, this is.
Still got my feet on the ground. I'm working on it.
You're working on it. There's generational trauma, right? Which everybody knows. Apparently, you have the family lottery, right? You're in that 1% family lottery that just
really
has this unconditional family, right? But at some point along the way, you were triggered in life to create a different dynamic, which then created other trauma, right? In different ways, slight, major, whatever it might be. And your trauma might have just happened at a later age, right? And the reason it could have came on is anything. It could have came on from karmic cycles, from past life experiences with the same soul, where you've been in that position before and weren't able to get away from it, right? From experience, I know what that feels like. So, karmic cycles are just as real as patterns and behaviors from this lifetime. There's generational trauma, there's ancestral trauma, there's spiritual trauma, there's trauma from all different areas, and then there's planetary trauma. No living being would look at the planet right now and not say that the planet is not in a trauma cycle. Not only are we in a trauma cycle, but we are amplifying it every day because you have extremes, one side to the other side of what gets the light shown on it, right? For control and greed, lust, and all those different, great vanity things and everything else that we do to ourselves and allow ourselves to fall into at times. The journey's the journey, right? And I don't think that there's always a reason for the trauma, especially for somebody who is living in the one lifetime. But I think as we go deeper into the layers, things that seem unexplainable start making sense. But then everything else in life doesn't make sense. So, you just have to decide.
I'm just gonna hang out here for a little bit.
Yeah. You have to decide what to do.
No, let's bring it back to a one lifetime. Like, let's ground us for 2 seconds, because other people listening may have had many lifetimes and are like right on board with that, and then others maybe not yet.
Right.
But here we are in this lifetime.
Yes.
And go ahead.
I was going to make a statement, Becca, and I say this in all my workshops and trainings. I said, it's okay if you don't believe in past lives. It's okay. Next time you'll get a chance to believe in it. But go on.
But I want to remember it. Like, that's my thing. Like, but anyway, I kind of
maybe you don't want to remember it. Not the details.
No, you don't.
Skinned alive? No. Burnt at the stake? No.
Remember this one? This is a good one. This is a really good one.
Okay.
Anyway, true, false, whatever.
Compared to what?
We used to think that the world was flat, right? And we know now for sure it's not. So I'm kind of holding it in that space. That's where my brain is. That's where my brain is. But regardless, whether the world is flat or the world is round, there are wounds that we have. Doesn't matter where the hell they came from. How do we continue to help people recognize them in order to be able to heal them? I mean, before you even get to the point of like, how do you heal them? Like, go ahead.
For me, I'm a little over analytical, so maybe this is easier for me than most, but it's really patterns and behaviors in my life, right? And it's when I see myself doing the same vicious cycles
But
again.
how do you know what the wound is to heal? So you understand that you're doing
You
something.
track it back.
Yeah, once I understand the cycles, then I can start looking deeper beneath the cycles to see what is the dynamics.
Like, why are you doing that?
Right. What it's this unraveling, right? It's a consistent unraveling of those behaviors, those cycles. What is the core root foundation? And then the minute you think you found it, then there's a deeper core root foundation. But it's, again, that's why we heal for our whole lives. It's not a one-time journey. This is our whole life is all about this healing journey and getting to the as deep as we can into the root, right? And at some point, you might start to say, I healed everything. And then maybe you think about the other lives, because some of the patterns and behaviors are still there and you have no explanation for them. And there's many, right? There's been this evolution of, I wanted to find a strong woman figure that lived in their masculine that I can prove that I was worth it to. That was my goal. Because that is the dynamic that I had with my mother. And no matter what I did, I still got abused. I was never good enough. And it was always this whipsaw of, you're too good, you're not good, you're good enough, you're not good enough, you're never going to be enough, you underachieve, you overachieve, you're this, you're that. And there was no satisfying, right? So that was the dynamic that I carried into adulthood. And it wasn't until I healed that dynamic that I realized that those relationships based on that dynamic were not beneficial to me at all anymore. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until I embraced my feminine, my masculine, and I started creating an internal balance, which still sways, but best I can with it. As I've created this yin and yang within me of light and dark, of male and female energies and all these different dynamics, that's when I started seeing core root issues that went beyond even this life that didn't make sense for me to have, but me having the belief and understanding that there is more to it than just this life allowed me to be open-minded to heal those wounds also.
Yeah, one of the ways of doing it is working through each individual layer of the onion. Okay? That's a very, very long process that could take lifetimes. And if someone's not highly intuitive, they're not able to see that. However, there's another process, is when you are intuitive, to look and see what is the core issue that's the bottom issue of all these different things. And when that shifts, all the other ones just collapse, because you've got the deepest root cause. However, a person has to be very intuitive in order to do that.
And here's the other part of this. The healing journey also is about accountability, right? Mm-hmm. At some point, I stopped pointing, blaming, shaming anyone else. Even the abuse I went through from my mother, right? I stopped blaming her. I stopped blaming myself also. It just is what it is. Like, I can't change it, right? So it can't control me for the rest of my life because she's not here to explain why, right? Like, I have to just let it go, which is not easy, is not simple. But the minute we start forgiving ourselves,
it's a whole lot less painful.
Yeah. And we don't live into it anymore, because once we're self-aware of the dynamic, it loses its hold over us.
And understanding what the path of your mother, and then whoever triggered her, and then whoever triggered that person, you start going back, and it goes back infinitum as far, and it's not personal. It's just you happen to be the one on the receiving end. You happen to be the one that showed up.
It felt pretty personal, but anyway.
Well, of course it does.
At the time, gotta tell you,
of course it does.
Being in this one life, it was personal, but that's okay, right? And that's part of that experience.
Right? I think life versus generations feels and looks different. Like, I think it's easy. And I don't know what you meant, Michael, when you said like going back to what triggered her and triggered her. Like, that's all generations, and I think everybody understands that piece, or can. It seems more tangible.
Intellectually, we understand it. However, we look, if our issue was with our mother or our father, we usually look and say, my issue was with my father. Well, it's not just with your father. It goes back all those generations,
Yeah.
and can go back infinitum. So the challenge is, when we're blaming or we have an issue with our father or mother, whoever it is, taking a look, stepping back, or as some people would say, going up in a helicopter and look at the bigger picture on what's gone on. And then the other question comes, and this is the big question: why did we choose to incarnate in that family? What is it that we wanted to learn or experience that we chose? And we've all chosen. There are no victims on planet Earth. Might be reluctant volunteers, but there's no victims here. And why did we choose to come into that family? What is the lessons we wanted to learn? And what is the commitment? Because there's women that have come into families that where there was a lot of sexual abuse, and they said, I'm going to stop this in this generation. And they do. They stop it so it doesn't continue in that family system. However, the big question is, for me, and I've written books about it, why did we choose those families? Why did we choose those experiences? Why did we choose to be male or female? Why did we choose to be whatever we are? And when we get a chance to look at the bigger picture, we go, is that what I came here to learn? Oh, I must have been insane picking that. However, yeah, I've been through lots of things. There's a number of times where I almost ended my life on this planet. I've gone through holy hell. And someone I loved very dearly lost her 13-year-old son. He was electrocuted in her backyard, and she was 35, and she said, that is the hole that made me holy. And there's lots of people I know that have gotten cancer, diabetes, or some other life-threatening illness. However, that illness wound up bringing them into spirituality. That illness wound up bringing them into looking deeper in their life, going beyond the surface. So the question is, and although, this, and I'm saying this for myself, I'm saying this for myself as well as everybody else, is why did we choose that? What was the lesson? What was the gift inside of that? And when you can start working through it and see the gift, you go, aha, is that why I chose that?
So,
go on.
Yeah, I mean, the shift for me with what I went through as a child was putting an end to what my kids were going through, right? Mm-hmm. And stepping into that and breaking the generational, the karmic, the ancestral curses, right? And really breaking them, because the abuse stopped here. It stopped here. I stopped it. And now they are safe, right? Somebody came, took them safe. That breaks the curses. That breaks all the trauma bonds across everything, across all levels, whether it's this one life, whether it's every life, whether it's generational, whether it's ancestral, whether it's spiritual, right? It breaks all the cycles. And why did I come here this life, and why did I choose this life, is because it's my time to break all these cycles and to heal through it so that I can fulfill whatever my purpose is, right? Which is very clearly stated, which I'm here to elevate humanity through knowledge and understanding of themselves, right? And that's the journey that each person on this planet needs to take. You want to fix the planet. You want to have peace. You want to fix the workplace. You want to create equality. It starts with everybody fixing themselves, right?
Absolutely.
Like, at its core, it starts with everyone doing work on themselves. Mm-hmm. And it sucks and it's painful.
But it doesn't always. I feel like when we say it sucks, like that makes everybody say, oh shit, I'm not going there. I don't want to forget that. I'm going to stay in my little bubble here, man. And even when we say, the world or the globe or the earth is in a trauma cycle, yes and no. I mean, yes. But because of that trauma cycle, and maybe that's what you're saying, right? Because of the trauma that you experienced, like the cycle's breaking. And it's because of everybody choosing to step into their gifts and helping. Like when you say everybody has to do their own work, I absolutely agree with that. Like I often said in marriage, you need to take care of yourself and become whole or as close to whole as you possibly can, and then come together and work on your marriage or work on whatever it is that might be not working well there, right? To try and bash your heads together working on the marriage with two bits and pieces that are barely hanging on by a thread, it's a little harder that way. It doesn't always work out. But I think that I went down a rabbit hole there, but my point was
there's other rabbits down there. Don't worry about it.
I like rabbits. They're good, friendly little critters. Actually, I'm not a huge fan of rabbits, but that's beside the point as well. To do it together is really where I'm going with all of this. I think that, when we say you have to go heal yourself, that sounds ostracizing, alone, no fun, hard, whatever. But when we do it in tandem with trusted other souls, people that are out there and have been on a journey, and this is again collecting dots, right? Like there are people that are along your path that have walked a few steps ahead of you, and like be open to them and allow them to like reach back and take your hand. And that's part of what you're doing with aligning teams, that we're doing with aligning teams, that I'm doing with It's Time, is there are all these people that have crossed our paths and are doing amazing work and have been doing their own healing journey and want to help others do the same so that we can heal the planet. And if we each decide to take that step, link arms with somebody, it's way easier and more fun that way.
Here's part of the biggest challenge. The biggest challenge is to see ourselves objectively. And, it's so easy to look at someone else and say, oh, I can see those spots that need, those dots that need to be erased or connected or whatever it is. So the best way of doing that is to find others that are either further along on the path, at least in the area where you want to go.
Yes.
And then work with them to help you. And the further they are along the path, especially if they have some of the similar traumas or understandings, then they can help you. And I did not go to be a healer or to do the work that I'm doing today. I didn't go for that. I wanted to stop my own pain. However, along the way, I said, oh, this is an interesting approach. Oh, that's an interesting approach. Oh, that worked really quick. And no, I don't like that one. And then all of a sudden take all these different things, put them in a shaker, and then say, okay, I'm going to pour it out. And I like this, but the other part, this takes too long, or this I don't agree with, or, and then find out what's right for you or for us or for me. And to keep on supporting other people that are on the path of like minds. So I love it when I meet other people. And the interesting part for me is I work better with the people that are further along on the spiritual path, where you would think that the newbies or people that are just breaking out would be my best clients. For me, actually, the further someone's along, the easier it is for me to work with them, because they already have the commitment. They've always put in time and energy. They're open and receptive. They're looking. However, just looking at, okay, what needs to be rearranged, explained, forgiven, what's the single most important thing that when that shifts, everything else shifts. So I do my best to keep it simple, and I'm constantly working on myself, constantly saying, okay, what's the next piece? Where do I need to love myself more? Where do I need to forgive myself with more? And who can I support? Who can I find to play with to where we're heading in the same direction? We have the same values. How can we support and help each other? How can we make a difference on the planet? one of my dreams is to train 1 million people on the planet to be healers and intuitives. That's one of my dreams. And bringing more light in and helping people understand that, I believe, will be one of my gifts. I also like, working with people like Michael and yourself. And we each have our gift. And it's all a piece of the whole. If the more we get to come together, the more alignment we have, where two or more gathered in my name, it just multiplies as far as the healing energy, the support, and even
Reach.
just sitting with each other. We don't even have to say anything, which is hard with the group that we have. Not saying anything is hard because there's so much to say. Anyway, back to you guys.
I mean, I learned something from every single living being on my path, right? I mean, my 4.5-year-old is my greatest teacher. Like, she is hysterical, right? And she cracks me up, and she throws me out of a king size bed, which is ridiculous, but like she's my greatest teacher, right? Like, I learned something from every single person that's in my life. I also have learned that I can work with anyone and help them get wherever they want to go, as long as they're willing. And, one of the hard things for me with letting go is I don't want to, when somebody sees their own potential and gets a little scared of themselves, I don't want to let them go, right? I want to help them get there. And that has always been a problem for me. But recently, over the last 3 to 6 months, I realized it's not my path and it's not my journey, right? So I've got to allow them to take their path, and 95% of the time that means without me in their life, right? Because there's no alignment anymore. My values don't match my goals, my ambitions. What I'm here to do doesn't align anymore, because everybody has these grandiose goals. I want to help 1 million people, right? I see many people say I want to help 1 billion people. Well, my legacy is that I'm going to elevate all of humanity. That is my legacy. I'm not leaving anyone out. I'm not going to leave a single being out. I want to elevate all of humanity. But the only way I can do that is by having people around me that have aligned goals, aligned values, that want to impact 1 million, that want to impact 1 billion, that want to, so that we can amplify, so that we can build and really create for the future that so many want, right? And be able to create a system where knowledge is free to every living being on the planet. Everybody has access, right? And to create this equality, well, to do that, we have to remove ignorance. And we have to remove the fear of separation and fear of control, and why we want to believe that we've got to control, and go from there. It's, to me, that's what it's all about, right? And trust me, like, aligning teams makes perfect sense for the name of this company, because we're still aligning as a team. Like, this is a never-ending, evolving process.
It's so fun to watch it evolve, though, right? Like, again, stepping into it and not resisting, just allowing it to flow, allowing it to evolve, and see where it takes us.
And what's really cool, because again, we have dynamics within this too, because we're all coming from different wounded places. So, maybe a woman was raised by a father to say, you can be anything you want in the world and never depend on anyone else. So then you have a woman who leans into her masculine, right? Because there's no balance. Then you have the woman that was raised, like my oldest was told, you'll never be anything more than a wife and cleaning houses and taking care of kids. You'll never do anything. Don't even consider going to college. Like, you're too stupid. Like, so these are the extremes, right? But everybody's some radius in between, which means that we've filtered these dynamics into our lives, where a woman needs to depend on a man needs to depend on a woman. Nobody is self-sufficient or whole on their own unless they do the work to get there, right? I'm playing both roles in my kids' lives. and they're doing pretty damn well if I say so. Like, they've come a long way in 1.5 to 2 years. So I'm not saying I'm perfect because I'm nowhere near it. But what I can tell you is every day that I heal, everyone in my radius heals more too. So as we're aligning our team's going to consistently realign because we're all on this evolutionary process. We're all on our own path and our own journey. And we need to be open for that to happen and allow it to happen. Like Becca said, I mean, it's all about that allowance thing. Allowing is so huge in life. Like, it's I never understood how big it was when while I was trying to control everything.
So I always try to substitute in a new C word instead of control is curiosity. That was kind of my way of figuring out how do I allow something. Like you can feel resistance, like when you feel like you're pushing that boulder up the hill, right? Like you're resisting something, you're resisting what is. And that's your signal to say, hey, you're resisting. And so, great. Now what do I do? Let go. Well, how do you let go? Look for the curiosity. Like, what is your curiosity about the situation? Curiosity about why is it happening? What am I getting from this? How is it serving me? Because there's something there that is, right? Or else we wouldn't be engaging in it. And maybe not as I think about other things. I don't know. But if you can replace control with curiosity, it starts you moving in the right direction, in a healthier direction.
But I think before you can do that replacement and reframe, you need to be self-aware of it first.
Right. That's you feel like you're pushing the boulder.
There were so many ways in my life that I didn't realize I was controlling.
Yeah. Me too.
And it wasn't until I became extremely self-aware. It wasn't until I became extremely self-aware and with self-compassion and self-love. Because it's so easy to go right into that judging space and beat myself into the ground and be like, I'm such a controlling piece of shit. No, we all are controlling in ways. We just don't realize that it's controlling.
Well, that's our security. I think.
It's also our insecurity.
Well, it's our insecurity trying to create
security.
It's not very good at it.
It's your insecurity trying to do your best to create security.
Right.
So the minute we go into
cycle is just painful.
So it's like, wait a minute, what am I doing here? Yeah. What am I feeling? What am I wanting? What am I needing?
A little bit of everything.
And we go back to the list.
Yes. Which I did add sanity to, by the way. So we're working in the right direction. Michael reminded me when he wanted straight that I needed to put sanity.
That's true. That's an important piece. Maybe to me it would be.
However,
straight or sanity. I'm just curious.
However, the most challenging relationships that you take to you may be your training ground and teaching ground for the future.
Can we consider this the future, that maybe my training can be over?
Yeah,
for just a little bit in this lifetime, maybe.
Becca, I definitely get that 10% of your training is over.
Oh shit! So
but that also means you have
will create security by staying single forever.
No, wait a minute. But see, your idea of training goes back to challenges.
Yes.
And maybe the other 90
challenges. There are some challenges I like.
But maybe the other 90% is about you allowing and attracting and embracing ease, grace, love, passion, abundance, acceptance, being honored, respected, loved, adored, cherished.
In a non-single way.
In a single or non-single way. Breathe, please.
but walking into it in a complete wholeness way. And walking into it from a completely different perspective than you've ever been before. Because you've done a lot of work. And you continue to do a lot of work. And you continue to identify ways to work on yourself. Like driving a shopping cart in a grocery store. Without injuring people that do like vegetables.
It's a journey and
It's-
kind of fun.
It's
Kind
always
of
a
fun when
journey.
you let it.
And be
No.
careful because work is a 4-letter word.
You know what's funny? There
And
was
fun
actually
is a
Work.
3-letter.
I like work. I don't like puzzles that I can't figure out. That's what ticks me off. I like
Why?
to, huh?
There was comments from LinkedIn that we didn't see in here.
Oh, what are they?
Oh, well then, I have to go because I actually have to jump on another call right this
Oh,
second.
sorry.
No, it's no one's fault but my own. Or you two can stay on and I'll just walk away from your computer. That's fine too.
It's all good.
Whatever you two want to do.
Thank you.
I surrender.
All right, guys. This was fun. I'm excited to do it again, and
Yes.
we will jump on as many rabbit holes as possible.
Sounds like a plan.
All
Have
right,
a good one, guys. Thank you.
Take
Bye.
care.
Bye-bye.